So for those of you who might not be in the LGBTQIA+ community, we have a lot of infighting. And by a lot, I mean a lot for a community that says we're very inclusive. Not necessarily true. And some of the least talked about infighting that goes on in the community is in the asexual community, which I happen to be a part of. So I thought, why not talk about some of the discourse that goes on in the ace community to start up a conversation to get a better idea of how we can all get on the same page and stop fighting with each other. And I figured, since a lot of people who watch my channel also happen to be on the asexual spectrum, this would be a good place to start that conversation. I asked on my other social media accounts what you wanted me to talk about in this video, so some of this will be from those answers and some will be general stuff that I have seen as an ace person who has been on the internet since I was like 14. It was actually a Threads post from Ace Dad Advice that made me want to make this video and start having a bigger conversation around the things that are going on in our community. This discourse between sex favorable and sex repulsed asexuals has been going on for what feels like forever. And it was actually the first comment I got in regards to this video. So it is something that is on a lot of asexuals' minds when it comes to discourse in our community. And I'm actually going to use this comment to kind of sum up what a lot of people in the community feel about the subject. There's a lot of discourse surrounding sex repulsed and sex favorable aces. It seems sex repulsed aces feel overshadowed by sex favorable aces, talk about their experiences as they have spent years being told something is wrong with them, and feel the caveat overshadows their experience. On the flip side, sex favorable aces are treated as less ace or not really ace by allos and by some aces. I've also been told personally by some aces that recognizing it as a spectrum devalues the label. And as someone who is demisexual, I've actually been on both sides of this coin and want to talk about my perspective on this. And just a heads up, I'm not talking for everyone in the community. This is just my experience, and we can have a nice, lively, friendly debate in the comments. But if I see hate, I will delete it. I'm demisexual, which is a micro label under the asexual umbrella. That means I do not experience sexual attraction unless I have formed a close bond with someone. I will also be deleting comments that just say demisexuality isn't a real thing, or I'm just spicy straight, or any kind of invalidating of demisexuality. It is real. It is not just straight people pretending and wanting to be special. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually fairly sex repulsed in my everyday life. When I sit down and I really think about it, I am genuinely repulsed by the idea of doing that kind of thing with anyone, and don't really understand how other people think about it and want to do it as much as they do. Also, this is not me sex shaming. I don't believe in that. If you are two consenting adults, I don't care what you do you. This is not me sex shaming. This is my own personal thoughts and feelings around sex. When I was growing up, I was so confused by all of my friends talking about wanting to get into relationships and start doing physical things and struggling with wanting to do physical things. I was in the Mormon church. Sex shaming and purity culture was a big thing, so yes, that is something that we talked about a lot, and I just never understood it. And like I just said, it was just something I never thought about or was even really interested in, minus the one time I had a crush on a friend when I was like 12, and I wanted to hold her hand and cuddle and kiss her, but I was also Mormon, and being gay was a sin, so I repressed that. Until I was like 18. It wasn't until I was 18 or 19 when I had experienced sexual attraction again that I realized the feelings I had toward that friend when I was younger was actually a crush and sexual feelings. Because at the time it was the only time I had actually felt those feelings, and I didn't feel them again until I was 18, so how was I supposed to know? And then when I started to feel sexual attraction again and wanting to be close to someone in that way, I was like, excuse me, no thank you. I do not want this. No. And honestly, being demi can be kind of annoying sometimes because I can go for so long without feeling any sort of sexual attraction towards anyone, and then it just pops out of nowhere, and I'm like, great, I gotta take care of this. This is shit. But when I'm having sexual attraction towards someone, that sex repulsion is out the door. It goes away. Having both experiences, because I can relate to both sides at different times of my life. Do sex repulsed asexuals get told there's something wrong with them for never feeling sexual attraction? Yes. And it's disgusting to make someone feel the way that we have historically made this part of our community feel. Do sex favorable asexuals get told that they're not really ace or they're less ace because they engage in those activities? Yes. And as an ace person who has had sex, I personally have been told this very thing. And it genuinely hurts. And it makes me feel like a less part of the community. But I think the thing that a lot of people have to remember, like any other sexuality, there are so many ways being asexual can look. We don't have to throw our own community members under the bus just to be more palatable for cis het folks. You are valid, and there is no one way to be asexual. This is something I feel like we as a community have needed to address for quite some time, just like every other community in the LGBTQIA+ community, we have a problem with racism. According to a study done in 2014 by Avon of over 10,000 asexual people, 73.3% of the ace community identifies as white or non-Hispanic, 5.2 identify as white and Hispanic, 3.9 identify as Asian or Pacific Islander, 2.5 identify as Black or African American, and 0.5 identify as American Indian or Alaskan Native, 6.8 identify as mixed race, and 3.8 identify as other. I want you to think of the most well-known asexual activists that are currently out there and online, and I guarantee you the majority of them will look like me. And I'm part of the problem. Off the top of my head, I can really only think of Yasmin Benoit as the most well-known POC asexual activist out there, who has been getting so much hate for how she shows up as an asexual Black woman in this world for years now, and literally doesn't deserve any of the online bullying and harassment that she has gotten. A great example of this is this past Pride Month, she got the brunt of aphobia, misogyny, and racism thrown at her on X, formerly known as Twitter, for posting a picture of her attending the London Pride Parade. And not gonna lie, she's one of the most amazing asexual activists out there, and was recently brought on the show Sex Education to help write an asexual character, which I know a lot of people didn't like that character, but at least she was there trying to get good asexual representation out. And that's another thing that I feel like a lot of white folks in the asexual community forget. It's a privilege to have access to labels like asexual and the labels that fall under the umbrella. In the article, the asexual community is predominantly white. Why? This is what it has to say about it. Asexuality is still a relatively exclusive and Eurocentric term that remains a strong possessionality within highly selective and highly white online spaces. It is not a word, or at least identity, that one would ever be exposed to in the public education system or any other general mainstream media outlet, at least until very recently. There is thus an intrinsic level of privilege required to even be able to self-identify as asexual. Therefore, those who do not have access or knowledge of these online spaces, or even the internet in general, will thus largely not have access to the term, will therefore not be able to self-identify by the term, and will therefore not be understood as asexual or ace or be included within the asexual community. Exposure to the terms of asexual and ace offline may be difficult to impossible. As such, the asexual identity may continue to be predominantly afforded to white people, both due to their greater privilege in accessing these select online spaces in general, as well as the fact that once gaining access or possessing pre-existing access, referring to the white creators of these online spaces where asexuality as a contemporary identity originated, they are more likely to continue to spread knowledge of the identity within bubbles dominated highly by others like themselves. It is a privilege to be able to have the language and access to labels and exposure to queer culture. We as asexuals who have a platform need to be doing better at uplifting the voices of POC folks in our community and truly listening to and learning from their experiences, because they will always experience asexuality and aceness far differently than white people. I will be linking down below a bunch of POC asexual content creators. If you want to go check them out, go see what they do. I would very much appreciate that, and we need to be diversifying our community and who we see when we think of asexual people. Gatekeeping isn't new to the queer community. Honestly, every community within the queer community has some sort of gatekeeping around it. And the biggest example of gatekeeping that I've seen within the ace community is who's really ace and who isn't. And this manifests itself in a couple different ways, actually. So I already talked about the discourse between sex favorable and sex repulsed asexuals. And yes, that is something that people do tend to gatekeep within the community. If you are a sex favorable asexual, you're not seen as really ace and are just faking it and trying to force your way into a community that you're not really a part of. And sex repulsed asexuals are seen as the true asexual. Another really big one that I've seen a lot of gatekeeping around is romantic orientations in the asexual community. And mostly I'm talking about heteroromantic asexuals. This one takes a little bit of explaining, especially if you're not in the ace community, so I'm just gonna break it down for you a little bit. The term asexual simply means you experience little to no sexual attraction. And a lot of people group in aromantics with that as well, thinking that if you are asexual, then you must be aromantic too. There's also this big problem of people not being able to tell the difference between the two or distinguish between them, but that's like a whole video in and of itself. There are many people on the asexual spectrum who experience a split attraction. This means that your sexual attraction doesn't line up with your other forms of attraction. That can be platonic, romantic, sensual attraction. And I am a great example of this. I am demisexual and biromantic, which means I romantically feel attracted to 2 or more genders. And there are many different romantic orientations like panromantic, homoromantic, and the one that seems to get a lot of hate in our community is heteroromantic, which is kind of super interesting to me because the very first person who ever introduced me to the asexual community was actually hetero ace. So it's such a weird thing that I always thought was interesting because that's how I got introduced to the community, and I never really thought people would get mad about that. I've seen a lot of folks, not only in the rest of the LGBTQIA+ community, have a problem with this, but people in the asexual community as well. The discourse around it is if heteroromantic aces should even be allowed in the community. I myself have gotten a number of comments over the years from heteroromantic asexuals voicing this concern and not really feeling like part of the ace community or the queer community or the straight community, and they really don't know where they fit, even though for me they're part of the asexual community. Personally, I feel like gatekeeping is really silly. If you say you are asexual, then that's what you are. No matter what your romantic orientation is, or if you happen to participate in sexual activities, if you connect with one of the labels under the asexual umbrella, and yes, the micro labels too. Oh, I forgot, people gatekeep micro labels as well. I almost forgot to mention that, but I do want to do a whole other video on micro label gatekeeping and that kind of thing, because I could talk about that for actual hours. Then you are asexual. I think the people who gatekeep tend to forget the nuance of life and how people can change and grow and learn throughout their whole lifetime. It doesn't make you a bad person trying out a label. If it fits, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. We need as a community to have a lot more grace towards folks just trying to figure themselves out. Gatekeeping not only hurts the people that they're trying to exclude, but also the people doing the gatekeeping and trying to make people conform into what they think is the right way of being asexual. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are in the asexual community, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts about the discourse that goes on in our community. If I missed anything, let me know. I might do another video. The reason I made this is because I absolutely adore this community, and I think we can always strive to be doing better and listening to each other's experiences and just trying to be cohesive as a whole and stop infighting, please, for the love of God. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!